The Indianapolis Colts could play spoiler this week with another great Anthony Richardson performance, plus a little extra help. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Hicks, your favorite resident film nerd here at horseshoehuddle.com. And my partner in crime, Jake Arthur, is our credentialed Crocs on the ground for the site as well. Yeah, Crocs on the ground. Do you wear Crocs, Jake? Is Crocs your thing?
You know, I don't, but Anthony, I think, said has like 60 pairs of Crocs. So, like, it's within the Colts theme.
Okay, cool. Perfect. We'll eventually figure out what shoes you wear, and I'll put that into the opener.
Mostly none.
Okay. Barefoot, foot on the ground, whatever it is there. But today, guys, we have a fun show in store. We're going to give you our final predictions for Colts versus Lions in this heated Week 12 matchup. And we're also going to dive into how the defense needs to have a Shaq Leonard type of performance to survive this Lions offense. But first, we're going to discuss Anthony Richardson, this Colts offense, and how they can stay on track despite another week with a hampered offensive line. So before we get into the entire offense here, Jake, the Colts did announce a starter on the offensive line is out yet again. Bernhard Raimann going to miss another week with that knee injury. The Colts have said he's week to week. Do you have any other update? Like, does Shane Steichen say anything positive about, how he's progressing or anything like that?
Shane's kind of buzz phrases are like he's progressing. He's getting there. Like, we'll see. But the guy hasn't practiced in 2 weeks. Maybe he starts to log a limited session next week. He physically, from what I've seen, though, looked better just walking around this week than he did last week. Last week, I knew right away he wasn't practicing because he had like a knee brace on and he was limping while he was walking around. But like Shane said, I think he's progressing. We'll see if he starts with a limited session sometime next week.
Yeah, and, the Colts need to get him back because he is a fringe Pro Bowler, if not more than that type of caliber player at left tackle. And when you're already starting Tanner Bortolini at center, already starting Dalton Tucker at right guard, and even if they eventually make that move from Dalton Tucker to a Mark Lewinsky, it's still not a strength right there as having Lewinsky out there when, you had Will Fries early in the season playing at a Pro Bowl level. So tough matchup this week. I know the Detroit Lions don't have Aiden Hutchinson anymore this season, but Aleem McNeil, DJ Reader, Zadarius Smith, this is still a pretty good defensive line.
They do have some guys.
Yeah, being down Bernhard Raimann is still a pretty big deal for this Colts team.
No, it definitely is. And it just affects the way that the Colts are going to have to attack things. Like, Shane Steichen is not going to be – he's going to have in the back of his mind when he's calling this game what they're capable of producing because of the fronts. We've already seen the run game has suffered, even with Anthony Richardson back out there. They've got two awesome interior defenders. I am a member of the Aleem McNeil fan club, and to have DJ Reader right there next to him, who is just as good as Grover Stewart and just as underappreciated. Like, they've got the teeth of their defense is tough. If the Colts can get to the second level into the linebackers, like, maybe the run game can flourish a little bit, but it's going to be tough. I think we're going to have to see a lot of 12 personnel again. They're probably going to they might try to go run heavy at some point, but I don't know. They're probably going to want to establish the run, but this I almost see as the inverse of last week, where they probably won't start rolling offensively until they attack through the air. They'll probably try and establish the run just to see if it can happen. But when was the last time we saw them be able to run the ball through 4 quarters?
Yeah, and a big part of establishing the run, too, is not getting behind negative game script. And you have the Detroit Lions offense on the other side of the field who are probably going to score pretty fast and furious in this game. So if you can run the ball all you want, but if you're down 14 in the first quarter or down 10 in the first quarter, it's hard to stick with the run the rest of the way. But let's get to this matchup between the Colts offense and the Lions defense. A big aspect of this game, the Lions run man coverage more than any other team in football this year. Typically that works out in your favor when you have a mobile quarterback, but Anthony Richardson's not really like the scrambling archetype of mobile quarterback. So it's a little push and pull there. Like, it is still beneficial when you have a player like Richardson, but it's not as beneficial as it would be like a Lamar Jackson or a Jane Daniels, where they scramble so much and can make man coverage really pay. Another big aspect of this matchup, the Lions blitz on third down higher than any other team in the NFL this season. Where has the Colts offense struggled the most this year? Facing the blitz, especially on third downs. We saw issues against the Minnesota Vikings. So this will be a big litmus test for Shane Steichen to see how much he grew from that Vikings game where they couldn't do anything on third down against that Brian Flores blitz-heavy approach. Will they be able to throw the ball against blitzes on third down in this one? I'm expecting a lot of mesh calls.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going against a team that runs a lot of man and blitzes on third down, you're going to get into a lot of mesh. You're going to run AD Mitchell and those run away from them routes on mesh, and hopefully he can have a couple big gains again. But I think this is really the big, not necessarily the big problem area for the Colts offense in this game, but the big like litmus test for this Colts offense. Can they overcome early season woes when it comes to third downs facing the blitz?
Yeah, and you mentioned the man coverage thing, which I think is going to be really important because this Lions defense, probably because they play so much man, they are susceptible to giving up some big plays in the passing game as well. And we know Anthony will do that. Like if he sees single coverage or he thinks his guy can get downfield, or even those layered balls over the middle, he might be willing to do that, especially in this matchup, and be successful at it because there won't be any ghosts out there that he doesn't see waiting to take advantage of his throws. So I do think that's important. You mentioned again with how can Shane adjust. They were, I mean, the scrambling is part of it, but they may still go ahead and go ahead with these designed runs that it felt more aggressive last week for sure. At times it feels like they've coddled Anthony and not wanted to go, full bore into his abilities, but I think they're a little more willing to do that. We talked to Alex Tanney today, and I asked about, there was talk about self-reflection and everything. It's like, why, while Anthony was sitting, how did you guys as coaches reflect on if this guy gets back on the field, we'll do X, Y, Z differently with him when he gets back out there? And, he admitted, we've got to put guys in the best position to use their best abilities. And we're trying to grow and evolve as an offense as well. And at this point, I think it's time to take off, any restraints. Like it's time to let this guy go. And if he gets hurt, whatever, but you're at least trying to do what's best for the offense.
Yeah, and I think ultimately when it comes down to what I'm looking at for the Colts offense in this game to get the win or at least be productive on offense in this one is, one, you got to have a little bit more rush success this week than last week. It's one thing to continually call the runs to soften up a defense, but you'd like to gain a little more traction than they did last week against New York Jets. So at least get some traction in the run game. And then kind of simplify the passing offense to a sense of lean on those rub routes, lean on isolation routes. Like if you're facing a lot of man coverage, get Josh Downs isolated against a player that you think he can beat, get him isolated against a linebacker, and just target Josh Downs. Like it doesn't have to be this over complicated, okay, go first read, second read, third read, and then get the ball out. If your first read's open, get the ball to your first read. So attack these linebackers in coverage. They got backup linebackers out there. They got injuries to their top guys.
Alex Anzalone's out, which is big.
Right. So get Josh Downs isolated there and then use your mesh concepts and stuff to create traffic. And then again, also with the simplified game, if you see that the Lions are going to blitz and they don't have a deep safety, just find Alec Pierce or find AD Mitchell one-on-one with a corner. And don't be afraid of the go ball. Like just throw the ball, just throw it up to a jump ball down the field. I'm not saying that's the 100% perfect play, but it's a simplified play that gets the ball out of your player's hands and gets it in a good situation where Alec Pierce can win a ball down the field. So when it comes to the passing game, be simplified with it, attack matchups, isolate what you want to isolate, and get those big plays that way. And then the run game, whatever you have to do to get some traction there. Maybe don't run Anthony Richardson up the middle over and over again.
Yeah.
But if you can get some traction with Jonathan Taylor and maybe some outside runs with Anthony Richardson, I think they can have a way to success in this game when it comes to offensive football, and avoid the big turnover. That's really the big thing. Keep your hands on the ball and avoid the big turnover, because that's where the Detroit Lions defense is great. I think they're number 2 against the pass this season because they have 14 interceptions as a defense, which leads the NFL. We're in week 12. They have 14 interceptions. They're a very good defense.
Their safety group is nuts.
Yeah, safety group is nuts. So when you're attacking those matchups, avoid those 2 players. More the corners and the linebackers. Avoid those crazy safeties. But yeah, I think there is a path for the Colts offense to find some success in this game. But next up, guys, we're going to switch over to the Colts defense. And again, I'm saying that the Colts defense needs to take a Shaq Leonard approach to this upcoming game. We're going to talk about that here in just a second.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. This month is all about gratitude, but sometimes there's another person we don't get to thinking of, and that's ourselves. It's sometimes hard to remind ourselves that we're trying our best to make sense of everything. Adulting is very hard, especially this time of year when things get really picking up. It seems like there's one thing after another. But trying to make sense of everything, it's not easy. So here's a reminder to send some thanks to the people in your life, including you. Whether you want to be thankful for your coworkers like Zach, I'm so thankful for you, buddy, or, your family at home, what have you. Again, don't forget yourself. Things are hard enough, give yourself a little bit of grace and, give yourself a break sometimes because, we're all just out here trying our best. If you are having a tough time or you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. All right, guys, it's fall/winter in Indiana, and that means basketball. The Pacers are going. College basketball is, there's basketball to watch in the state of Indiana right now. And whether you're watching, a high school game or you're out in the pros and you need tickets, hit up Game Time. They have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play even easier. Game Time Pick filters out all the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste all your time picking and choosing through all the just red tape that it feels like comes with buying tickets to live events. Prize Picks also has the lowest price guarantee, which means they'll credit you 110% of the difference if you find better tickets at a competitor in the same area. That's how confident they are that you're going to get the best price there. They've also got the Game Time ticket coverage, which means your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the entire ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it?
Game time.
That's right. Almost caught you slipping. All right, everybody. So defense. Everyone is kind of on board with thinking the Colts offense can do a little something, but the defense, that's the one that I think it's going to have a little bit of a tough time with this Detroit offense that's really just on a historic pace, dropping 50 burgers on everybody. But Zach, you left us off with that last one saying they need to take a Shaq Leonard approach. What do you mean there?
Yeah, so when I think of Shaq Leonard, who unfortunately at this point is kind of going to be a Colts legend in our heads and not anymore like a current player for the Colts. It's unfortunate how his career panned out. But during Shaq Leonard's prime, the way that I would classify it is maybe on a down-to-down basis, it wasn't perfect with him, but the flash was always there. The flash, the takeaways, the high points of play were always there. So when it comes to a big game against the Detroit Lions, I don't need the Colts defense to be perfect. I don't need them to be suffocating. I don't need them to hold the Lions to 4 yards a pass and 2 yards a rush. It would be awesome if they did something like that. But I just don't need that to happen. I don't foresee it happening. But what we need is the Shaquille Leonard type of game where you're making your tackles, you're not missing tackles, and you're forcing turnovers. Force turnovers. That's how you win this game. We talked about in the first segment how the Detroit Lions defense has 14 interceptions this year, number 1 in the NFL. The Colts defense, 13 forced fumbles. this season. I believe that's number 1 in the NFL. It might be number 2 in the NFL. It's in top 2 in the NFL.
Mhm.
13 forced fumbles this season as a defense. Regardless of how you make the takeaway happen, it can be a punch out, it can be a forced fumble. Shaquille Leonard was the punch out guy back in the day. It could also be an interception. I don't care how it is. It could be a 4th down stop. We will certainly take those as turnovers in my book as well. However it is, they got to force turnovers in this game because you're not going to stop that Detroit Lions offense for 60 minutes. You're not going to stop them from start to finish in this one. They're going to get theirs. They're going to get their points. Jahmyr Gibbs, Dave Montgomery, Sun God, Amon-Ra, St. Brown. These guys are too good. You're not going to stop them for the entire game. But if you can force some timely turnovers, give the short field back to your offense a couple times, then you have a chance to play upset. And I think that's the big key for this Colts defense is anytime you got the first tackler in there and the ball carrier is standing up, second guy come in punching the ball. If you have a chance to make a play on the ball for an interception, do whatever you can to make that play. The Lions are going to score their points, but if you can get some takeaways, you have a chance to beat them on Sunday.
That is exactly right. And I'm probably going to be speaking ignorantly toward any NFL coach, but I do think your game plan here, just you have to resign to the fact that you're going to give up yards and probably points. The emphasis is on diagnosing the gifts that opposing offense gives you and taking advantage of that. Just like you said, I think when I watch the Lions, I see, Jared Goff, a lot of those crossing routes and everything. He does a lot of stuff over the middle of the field, and middle of the field might be a little open with how the Colts linebackers play at times, but Nick Cross and Julian Blackmon, I think, could play a big role in this. These guys, keeping your eyes on what Jared Goff is doing. I mean, when available to, like, you're going to have other things. You have other keys you have to point in on. But I think the safeties over the middle of the field could be big in this one. You might see one where Julian Blackmon historically has been able to do this. It hasn't really happened this year, but the guy's good at watching quarterbacks, getting one step ahead of them, and then jumping the route and picking off an interception and getting an interception over the middle of the field. I think that would be huge. We've been waiting on something like that for that guy all year. But I think also just simply the pass rush has to work. Houston, when they were rattling Jared Goff and forcing him into more interceptions than he has incompletions on a normal game, they were able to make him uncomfortable. DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart get some push up the middle. Tyquan Lewis, we'll see if he's back. He's questionable, but he was able to practice all week. I think him just being able to give some juice in the second wave of the defensive line would be big. But it's a tall task against an offensive line that's the best in the league. But the Colts got some dogs on the defensive line too. Like, they are more than capable of getting into the backfield. But you just cannot let Jared Goff sit back there and have a picnic because he's a 70-75% completion guy right now. The guy is unreal when it comes to taking what the defense gives you. So you have got to speed his clock up a little bit.
Yeah, the biggest thing I want to say too about this Colts defense, and I say this with love. I love how this Colts defense has played for the second half of the season. Even last week's game, I think, was a little bit of an aberration with the short fields for the Jets offense. I think the Colts defense has been gearing up for a game like this all season. And when I say that, I mean, regardless of opponent this season, the Colts defense has given up like 400 total yards of offense, tons of yards passing, $150 on the ground, pretty much every game. It doesn't matter who you're going against. It could be the worst quarterback in football. It could be Josh Allen. They will give up yards. The games where the Colts defense has been a net positive, though, are the games where they've stood tall in the red zone and forced turnovers. Those are the biggest things for this defense, because if they're not doing that, they're bending and breaking. If they're doing those things, though, they're bend, don't break, which gives your offense a chance to win. So they didn't really do it too much against the Jets, and that's where we saw the Jets put 27 points on this Colts defense. But the other games before that, the games against the Buffalo Bills, the games against the Minnesota Vikings, the game against the Houston Texans, it wasn't a perfect defensive effort, but they were bending and not breaking. They were standing tall in the red zone. They were getting sacks. They were forcing turnovers. That is where you can win games with this defense. So they need to be on their A game when it comes to forcing those turnovers. It's a very tough task this week, a very, very tough task, where the Colts run defense, especially between the tackles, has allowed the most yards per carry in the NFL this season. And you get Montgomery and Gibbs this week, who are, I mean, if you had to do top 10 running backs in football, they're probably both in the top 10 and maybe both in the top 5. They're both very, very good running backs. So The Colts have to stop the run first and foremost. I did see the Detroit Lions are number one in the NFL in play action rate with nearly 40% rate.
They can. They can do it when you run the ball.
Right.
Like
So if
yeah.
you're getting gashed in the run game and you're being, you're being passive in the pass rush because of that, that'll allow the Lions to hit you over the top of that play action. So it's a tough task this week. Keep things in front, punch the ball out, force turnover, stand tall in the red zone, and you have a chance. But if the Colts go this whole game without forcing a turnover with just miscommunications in the red zone, the Colts offense, no matter how they look, are not going to be able to keep up with this Lions offense. So Colts defense, again, doesn't need to be perfect. Just give the ball back to the offense a couple times. Get off the field when you can, and have some positive moments in this one so the Colts offense has a chance to keep pace.
Yeah, absolutely. So coming up here next, guys, we're going to get to your hot takes and what we think is going to happen in this game. All right, listen up, renters. Have you ever felt like you're just stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? Well, it's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards, and that's where Bilt Rewards comes in. Bilt is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Bilt points roll in. You know, that's incredibly frustrating when, as someone who's rented before, you're just paying this money month after month. You're like, what is this going towards? I don't have a house. I'm not paying this towards a mortgage. Bilt helps you actually get rewards back. Like, you don't have that question of what is this going towards anymore. Use your points to jet off on a dream vacation. Put your points toward a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and over 700,000 hotels and properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes or even redeem them towards a future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle-free through the Bilt Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Bilt points have been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Points Guy and Bankrate. So earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbilt.com/lockedonnfl. That's joinbilt.com/lockedonnfl. Make sure to use our URL so that they know we sent you. Joinbilt.com/lockedonnfl to start earning points with your rent payments today. All right, y'all. So we're going to go ahead and start with some hot takes. We love this one. And in a matchup like this, that's all we have to cling to, I think, is the hot takes. Because, again, you got a team that's under 500 of the Colts, and you got a team in the Lions who, for my money, is the best in the league. So a lot of people think the Colts have no business winning this one, but we know otherwise. So here's one from our guy, Kenny out in Ohio. He says, Anthony Richardson will have his highest rushing production of the year in attempts and yards, which again means the Colts are letting him loose. More of his yards will be from scrambles than designed runs, Zach. So you think, that's, like you mentioned, that's the way to take advantage of that man defense.
Yeah, I think we would see Richardson's scramble rate jump up in this one if the Colts are down early, because then you get Richardson more into that fourth quarter mindset. You guys know the fourth quarter mindset with Anthony Richardson. It's when the Colts need, and we saw this past week when they were down 8 in the fourth quarter, when the Colts need points late in a game, regardless of how the first 3 quarters look, Richardson turns it up to a different level in the fourth quarter. He opens up more of the scrambling. He gets more aggressive throwing the ball down the field. So if the Colts find themselves in a hole early in this game, like, 21-0, 17-0, which could happen, very well could happen this week, then I think we could see the scramble game really open up for Richardson, because he'll be in a little bit more desperation. There might be more turnovers as a result, but I do think we would see him kind of up some different aspects of his game if the Colts find themselves in an early hole.
Yeah, and this person may be watching right now. This was from YouTube, Indiana Pacers Colts fan. Richardson throws for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. Josh Downs has 150 of those yards. Jonathan Taylor has 60 yards rushing. And then Anthony throws in 65 yards rushing. Latu has a sack. Kwity Paye gets a sack. Buckner gets a sack. Moore has a pick. So he stat sheet stuffing. But, we said this was going to have to be a big play defense for this thing to come through. And there was a lot of things that I said. But if you looked at the box score, that's not like totally insane. Latu and Paye both had a sack last week. I think Buckner might have as well, but he does on a normal week. But yeah, all those things together, I think that bodes well for the Colts in that instance. But yeah, that's if you're going to pick one of those things to be most realistic, Zach, what do you think?
I think the Josh Downs one, I know 150, it seems like a pretty high number for him, but he has this tendency to, when there's a break in coverage, to just be the guy
Yes.
wide open. We saw it against the Houston Texans this year. We saw it multiple times last year. I think against the
Browns
Las
last
Vegas
year.
Raiders and the Browns last year. He had
In
long
the
catches.
Indiana Knights uniforms, which they'll be wearing on Sunday.
There we go. So I think the sneaky one is Downs at like 150, especially because I think the Lions have struggled this year with slot receivers. They bring Brian Branch down a couple times to kind of mug them and attack them a little bit, but for the most part, the Lions have struggled against slot receivers. I might have said Browns there. The Lions have struggled against slot receivers this season. So I do think there could be a couple plays where Downs really breaks free in this one. 150 might still be a little bit high for that, but look, Josh Downs is playing some great football right now. He is their go-to player on third downs. Anthony Richardson clearly loves him. That is his guy. I could see it. I could totally see it happen. I also want to say that if half of those predictions are correct, we're going to give that guy the Nostradamus Award and do a bunch of fun things with that, because that is putting it all out there. Maybe this guy's from the future. That'd be great if all that happened. But no, I do like the Josh Downs having a big game prediction for sure.
All right, we'll do one more here before you and I give our own predictions. So we had a couple in here that were intertwined with the recent podcast beef. So both of these basically involve the defense getting a takeaway or a pick six or something with Zaire Franklin involved, going down for the photo opportunity right in front of Pat McAfee's suite, and then things starting to heat up from there. And I got to be honest, Pat McAfee's suite is right down there in one of the end zones. If the Colts defense gets a turnover and that's the end zone they go to for the pictures, that could create an interesting moment. Pat McAfee and Zaire Franklin, there's no love lost in the last week or so between those two. Pat McAfee was very publicly outspoken about that today. That one is spicy, and we like to get spicy on the show, so I definitely wanted to mention those.
I don't know if either of them would be too upset in that situation, just because it would be a Colts positive thing happening. But
cold on Colt crime,
Yeah, whatever's happening with that podcast beef or whatever with McAfee and Franklin, I hope it irons out here going forward. Maybe
we're not in it, is all I know.
Look, keep it kind of close, and maybe it irons it out in this game. I don't know, but we'll see. That's a fun one though, for sure.
All right, so how are you feeling about this one? We'll obviously have our roundtable coming out on Horseshoe Huddle this weekend, but how are you feeling about this matchup?
Here's the way I view it really with this one. This game doesn't really matter too much for the Colts' attempt at the playoffs. Mm-hmm. They have 6 games left. They have to win 5 of them. And the 2 that you could kind of lose are either this one or the New York Giants game, because they're NFC games. They don't factor into a lot of tiebreakers. All that to say, they have 1 buffer game in these final 6, and you're going against the best team in football this week. Now, as a team, you never come out and say like, oh, this game doesn't matter. Who cares if we win? But I do think that it kind of lessens the pressure on me. It lessens the pressure on these players even to a degree, though, is like you go out there and it's kind of like, we're going to give our best shot to this top team. We're going to throw as many punches as we can at them, maybe mix in some trick plays and really throw the kitchen sink at this team. So it's kind of like a game where you probably don't feel great about winning, but I think you feel great about the Colts, just doing something different in this game. I don't think it's going to be a win for the Colts, but I do think it's going to be a competitive, hard-fought game. And I even think we'll be sitting here in like the third quarter being like, okay, the Colts are kind of running with these guys a little bit. Again, I don't think they win. I think the Lions are just too much of a buzzsaw on both sides of the field right now, like offense and defense. They're a very, very good football team with Super Bowl aspirations, and they're playing like it this year. But I do think the Colts are competitive in this one, and I think it's going to be a closer game than some people expect. 7.5 actually feels pretty decent, though, for the line, so I can't even do a hot take with that. But I do think this could be like a 1-score game going into the fourth or kind of late in the third quarter, where people are like, oh, the Colts are, throwing some punches with the Lions, and we'll see. I do see many ways where this could go bad for the Colts, but I do think they come out in this one with a chance to experiment a little bit and throw some punches with the top team. And hopefully they're able to step up to that challenge, because after this, regardless of what happens in this game, they have 5 games they got to win the rest of the season. Even if you win this one, you want to keep that momentum with the last 5. If you lose this one, then you definitely have to win the last 5 if you want to make the playoffs. So it's playoffs for the Colts after this week, regardless. So get all your punches in this week, and then we go from there.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well YOLO it. You got the bye week coming up soon. So, no, I think in typical Colts fashion, this is going to be a very big play based game. Like the in between and all the routine stuff, probably going to be clunky or unproductive, but points will come because of big plays on both sides of the ball. But just some hidden kind of X factor things. To my eye, when I've watched the Lions on TV this year, their defense is very aggressive, very physical, and sometimes very grabby. In particular, Terrion Arnold. That in a man coverage situation like this, where we know Anthony Richardson is aggressive and will go downfield, you could have one or two DPIs or holding calls that really play a big role in the Colts putting some points on the board. So I think that's a kind of a hidden X factor there. I think ultimately, the Colts offensive line is super banged up. I mean, they're going to have 3 rookies out there again. That's really tough. I mean, the Detroit defensive line is maybe their only vulnerable area of the team, but it's like have the advantage in this one. So I'm going to give the Colts the benefit of the doubt and say that they can do some things either by what you said, put some creative wrinkles in there to make enough big plays on offense to trade some shots with the Detroit offense. I have Detroit winning 34-31. I think it'll be an exciting, high-scoring game, but ultimately, I don't have anything in me that says the Colts are going to win this one because it's like, is there an avenue for it to happen? Sure, but I think it's up to the Lions whether or not the Colts win. Like the Colts could do everything right and still not outscore the Lions. So I think the Lions would have to have a lot of mistakes in this one to lose. They're just really good guys. Like I'm usually pretty optimistic and I have an avenue for the Colts to win, which of course they can, but the Lions are really good. Like they're probably the best team in the league.
Yeah, I got Lions 38-28 in this one. I think this Lions team is just on a new level right now. And again, I think the Colts keep this competitive into the third quarter, like late third quarter, but at some point the talent discrepancy does come out to play, and the Lions are just that stacked. But I think the 2 key metrics will be turnovers for both teams, obviously, and red zone efficiency, how often these teams are converting red zone trips to touchdowns. That'll be the story of this game. I know I sound like an old ball coach talking about that because that applies to every game, but especially in this one. If the Colts are very, very good in the red zone and they force turnovers on defense, they have a chance in this game. I don't know if they have much of a chance outside of that, but we'll see. It should be an interesting game. And again, it's kind of like a no pressure game this weekend for us, at least as fans and as people watching, because unless they get absolutely trounced like the Jaguars did last week, which again, it could happen. I hope it doesn't, but it could happen. But unless that happens in this game, it's kind of like, okay, cool. Our last little break before the playoffs start for the Colts, which is the final 5-game stretch. So enjoy this one. Enjoy. Hopefully the Colts throwing some wrinkles out there and doing what they can to throw punches. And hopefully we see a good Anthony Richardson and Colts offense, because that would make it a game worth watching for sure on Sunday. But we want to thank you guys for making Locked On Colts your first listen today. Now for your second listen, go find the new Locked On NFL now with 2 shows every day. First, the Madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso, and then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you guys want to become a Locked On Colts insider and chat with us directly, follow the link in our show notes. And if you don't already, make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2, all on Twitter. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. We love your guys' ratings and reviews, and we'll catch you guys back here Sunday after the game.